The prairie wind carried the kind of hush that made a person feel watched, even when standing alone under the wide sky. Folks living near those dry plains used to say that silence could speak if you listened long enough. And on that warm evening, the silence felt heavy with something coming. The sun dipped low, brushing everything with a gold glow that stretched across the valley, drifting over the grass, the cottonwoods, and the slow-moving river that wound like a silver ribbon. Out there where the land had its own laws, and every sound had meaning. A story began to take shape long before either of them understood it. The Apache King stood near the riverbank, his eyes sharp, steady, and unreadable. He held himself with the calm power of a man who had faced storms, hunger, and battles, yet carried no need to boast. A bow rested across his back, and the small pieces of tribal jewelry on his chest glinted softly under the fading light. His long black hair moved with the breeze, brushing over his shoulders as he studied the land like he was reading a message written only for him. Every part of him looked carved by the wild country he lived in. Behind him, the world shifted. She approached quietly, her steps soft on the sand, though her heart pounded as if the whole valley could hear it. She had traveled far, farther than most women dared. Hardships had shaped her just as the land shaped him. She had known cold nights, empty cupboards, and the fear of not belonging anywhere. But she had also known hope, and hope kept her feet moving even on days when her courage failed her. Something about him had drawn her here, something old as the hills and strong as the river, that now glimmered before her. They were different in every way the world measured people. Yet the same wide land held them both. Their paths crossed in a way neither of them had planned. The river flowed quiet, almost still, as she stepped toward it. Her breath left her in small, shaky waves. The Apache King did not turn at first. Maybe he sensed her. Maybe he heard the lift of her dress brushing against the sand. Or maybe he was waiting. No one ever knew what thoughts stirred behind his dark eyes. The wind picked up, tugging at her hair as she stood behind him. Watching the muscles in his back rise and fall with each slow breath, she had seen many men, hard-working men, rough men, gentle men, but none carried themselves the way he did. There was strength in him that did not demand attention. It simply existed, steady like the earth. She moved closer until she stood only a few steps away. The river shimmered in front of them, catching the last bit of daylight. He finally turned, and his gaze locked on her with a quiet, powerful intensity that made her pulse skip. She had expected surprise or suspicion. Instead, she found a calm curiosity, as if he had known she would come. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them filled with the low rush of the river and the fading cries of distant birds. Somewhere far off, a coyote yipped at the coming night. She let out a long breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Every ounce of fear, confusion, and strange new courage inside her pushed her forward. The world around them faded until there was only the sound of water in his steady gaze. She stepped into the river. The cool water wrapped around her ankles, then her calves. Her dress slipped from her hands and fell behind her in the sand. She stood there, the water rippling around her legs, the golden sky reflecting on the surface. Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what she was about to say. "Do you like what you see?" she asked. Her words did not come out with boldness. They came out soft, almost like a whisper carried by the river, but they reached him all the same. His eyes shifted, not in shock, but as though he was trying to understand her meaning. There was nothing playful in her tone, nothing careless. She wasn't teasing him. She wasn't seeking praise. Something deeper sat inside those few words. Something tied to the journey she had taken and the truth she had hidden for too long. The Apache King did not answer immediately. He looked at her in the water the way a man looks at a sign he's been warned to read carefully. His jaw tightened, just a little. His fingers brushed the feathered string hanging from his shoulder, a habit he had when he was working through something unspoken. The breeze stirred again, lifting the ends of her hair, brushing it across her cheeks. She stood tall, not trying to impress him, not trying to challenge him, just standing as herself in the open, waiting for whatever came next. But he still didn't speak. A shadow passed over his expression, something between caution and something else she couldn't name. He lowered his gaze to the river for a moment, then lifted it back to her, studying her as if the truth behind her question mattered more than the question itself, and maybe it did, because the valley had ears. The wind carried rumors, and neither of them stood here by accident. The river swirled around her legs, faster now, as if sensing the shift in the air. The sky darkened as the sun dropped behind the hills, washing the world in deep amber and rising blue. A hawk screamed overhead, circling once before flying toward the mountains. She waited, breath tight in her chest. He finally stepped closer to the water's edge. Not into the river, not yet, but close enough that she could see the tension in his shoulders, the question forming behind his steady eyes. Then the sound came. A branch snapped somewhere, behind the tree line. He turned sharply. She froze. The river kept moving, sending thin ripples around her legs. The wind quieted. The world seemed to hold its breath. The Apache King lifted his chin, listening. His hand moved to the bow on his back. His eyes narrowed. Something or someone was approaching. Not an animal. Not the wind. Something heavier. Her heart hammered. She stepped back without meaning to, the water splashing softly behind her. He raised a hand, signaling her to stay still. His entire body shifted from calm watcher to grounded warrior. Every sense alert. Another crack came from the brush, then a low, muffled voice. Not friendly, not familiar. She swallowed hard and whispered, "Who is that?" He didn't take his eyes off the trees, but his voice came low and steady. Someone who should not be here. The shadows thickened. The sounds grew closer. The river felt colder around her legs, and as the first figure stepped from the brush, the Apache King moved just enough to shield her with his body. 2 inches of space making all the difference in the world. The night deepened. The danger grew, and the river carried away the last bit of light as the unknown figure took another step forward, boots sinking into the sand. Neither she nor the Apache King knew what would happen next. But something had just begun. Something tied to both their pasts and the secret she had been hiding since the day she first set eyes on him. The river kept whispering, the land kept watching, and the mystery stepped closer with every breath. The next moment changed everything. The figure stood, half hidden in the shadows of the brush. And the Apache King did not lower his bow. His stance shifted just enough to block her fully, though he didn't touch her or look back. His voice stayed calm, but there was a weight in it that made her understand this was no ordinary visitor. She felt the river move behind her, cold and restless, as if the water itself sensed something dark creeping closer. A few heartbeats passed before the stranger stepped fully into view. He was tall, broad, and wrapped in a coat dusty from long travel. His hat hid most of his face, but she caught the line of his jaw and the way he leaned slightly to one side, as if carrying an old injury. His eyes stayed on the Apache King, never drifting toward her, though she had no doubt he knew she was there. "You're a long way from your lands," the stranger said. His tone was dry, like someone who had been riding under the sun for too many days. "So are you," the Apache King replied. The tension thickened, stretching thin between them. The man shifted slightly, and she noticed the shape of a rifle slung over his shoulder. Not raised, not threatening, but far from comforting. The river gurgled behind her as she took another step toward the bank. Wanting solid ground beneath her feet, the Apache King lifted a hand toward her, silently telling her not to move. She froze. The stranger looked around slowly, his eyes scanning the valley, the trees, the tall grass. "Didn't expect to find anyone here," he muttered. "You should leave," the Apache King said. "This land is watched." The man lifted his chin. "By who? You alone?" A faint shift of wind tugged at the feathers tied in the Apache King's hair, but he didn't answer. The stranger studied him for a long moment before his eyes narrowed. "There was talk in town," he said. "Talk about a woman traveling alone. Someone said she was headed toward the high plains. Thought it was just more gossip." Her pulse jumped. She wanted to step forward to speak, but something in the Apache King's silence kept her still. The stranger's gaze finally slid past him just enough to acknowledge her. He didn't stare, he didn't leer. He simply took in her presence like it added a piece to a puzzle he had been carrying for a while. "So it's true," he said quietly. "You found her." The Apache King's jaw tightened.
I
didn't find her. She came." The man nodded once, slow and thoughtful, as though the answer made sense in a way she didn't understand yet. He took a small step back, his boots sinking into the soft ground. "I won't trouble you," he said, "but others might. They're not far behind." The Apache King's eyes sharpened. "How many? Enough to make you think twice about staying here." That was all he said before he turned and disappeared back into the trees, as silent as he had appeared. The rustling faded, leaving only the low hum of the river and the distant cry of night birds. She stepped out of the water, the sand cold beneath her bare feet. Her dress lay where she had dropped it, and she bent to pick it up, her hands trembling slightly. The Apache King didn't look at her. His gaze stayed fixed on the tree line. "Who were they?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. When he finally turned to her, his face held a guarded expression she hadn't seen before. "Men who follow trails not meant for them," he said. She wrapped her dress around herself, keeping her eyes on him. "They're looking for me." "Yes," he said, without hesitation. The honesty made her breath catch. She had known it deep down, even before the stranger stepped out of the brush, but hearing it aloud made the fear settle deeper inside her chest. "Why?" she whispered. The Apache King studied her with a long, steady look. "Only you can answer that." She looked away, the river stretching before her like a path she could no longer take. Her mind ran through memories she had tried hard to bury. The long road she traveled, the night she left everything behind, the whispering threats that followed her. She hadn't told anyone the whole truth, not even him, not yet. He didn't push her. He stood there, waiting with a patience that felt both comforting and dangerous. She finally met his eyes. "Do you think they'll return?" "Yes," he said, "and soon." Her stomach twisted. The valley suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. She moved closer to him without meaning to, drawn by the steady strength he carried. But he stepped back, keeping a respectful distance, as if he sensed the storm inside her. "I won't let them take you," he said. The words were simple, not loud, not forceful, but firm enough to settle into her bones. She didn't know why he cared. She didn't know what he thought she was running from. All she knew was that she believed him. The sky darkened as the last line of sunlight vanished. Stars began to prick through the blue, spreading across the vast sky like small fires. The night held a strange stillness, the kind that made every whisper from the grass sound louder. She pulled the dress around her shoulders and followed him as he walked toward the riverbank's higher ground. He moved with purpose, scanning the land as if he could read signs no one else could see. "How long have they been tracking me?" she asked. "Long enough," he replied. She swallowed hard. "You knew before today." He didn't deny it. "I saw their prints 2 days ago," he said. 3 men. Heavy boots, moving fast. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the cold creep in. "Why didn't you tell me? You weren't ready." The answer stung, but she found no anger in herself. Only confusion? Ready for what? He looked at her, and for a moment she saw something like sympathy flicker in his eyes. Then it was gone. "Ready to tell the truth," he said. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The truth was a long, tangled thing. Hard to speak? Harder to trust with someone else. She had carried it so long that it felt like a part of her bones. He climbed up the small rise overlooking the valley. She followed, her breath turning faint in the cool night air. From the top, the land stretched wide and silent. "Look," he said. She looked at first. She saw nothing but dark rolling hills. Then something moved. A flicker of orange. A second flicker, a line of faint lights glowing where the grass bent near the ridge. Small fires, campfires. Her heart dropped. "They're close," she whispered. He nodded. Too close. It rose inside her like a rising flood. She pressed a hand against her chest, trying to steady her breathing. "I didn't think they'd follow me this far." "They won't stop," he replied. Not until they find what they're after. She stepped closer to him. What do they want? His voice lowered. You know? Wind swept across the rise, carrying the faint scent of smoke. She shivered and turned her face away. Her throat tightened around the words she could not speak. The weight of her secret pressed hard on her ribs. He watched her in silence, waiting. But she wasn't ready. Not yet. Below them, the distant fires flickered brighter, spreading slowly across the far ridge. The night grew heavy with the promise of danger. We should leave, she said. He nodded once. At dawn. Why not now? It's safer to move with daylight. In the dark, they could circle us. She hugged herself tighter. Do you think they know exactly where I am? Not yet, he said. But they will. She felt herself tremble. He stepped closer, not touching her, but standing near enough that the warmth of his presence cut through the cold. You're not alone, he said quietly. She met his gaze, searching for something solid in the darkness. She didn't find answers, but she found steadiness. Far off, another fire lit. Then a second, and a third. Her voice cracked as she whispered, They're spreading. Yes. Looking for me. Yes. The wind died. The valley seemed to listen, and she knew the truth she had hidden would soon have to be spoken. But not tonight. The Apache king lowered his bow, his eyes never leaving the distant fires. Rest, he said, because tomorrow everything changes. She stood beside him, her heart pounding, knowing he was right. Tomorrow, nothing would be the same. The night settled deeper over the valley, wrapping everything in a quiet that felt too thin to trust. She sat near the small fire the Apache king built at the edge of the rise, watching the flames rise and fall while her thoughts ran in circles. He had moved a short distance away, scanning the hills, listening to the wind, studying every sound with the patience of someone who knew danger by its footsteps. The distant campfires still glowed faintly at the ridge, their light flickering like warning signs stretched across the dark plains. She pulled her knees close and tried to steady her breath. The valley felt wide, but not wide enough. No matter how far she came, the past kept finding her trail. She looked at the Apache king again, the glow of the fire brushing over his strong features, revealing nothing of what he felt. He carried the weight of his people in the way he stood, but he also carried a sense of quiet understanding that shook her more than the threat of the men chasing her. When he finally returned to the fire, he lowered himself to the ground with the steady grace he always held. His eyes shifted to her, not demanding answers, just waiting for whatever she chose to speak. She didn't know where to start. There's more you haven't told me, he said softly, not unkindly. I know, she whispered. I just didn't think it would follow me out here. Trouble always follows its own tracks, he replied. She looked away. The truth sat heavy in her chest. She wanted to speak it, but the fear of what might change afterward kept her silent. She wasn't ready to reveal the real reason those men wanted her back. Not yet. Before she could reply, the soft thud of approaching footsteps made both of them look up. It wasn't from the ridge. It's not from the brush behind them. It came from the slope beneath the rise, near the deep grass. The Apache king rose quietly, hand near his bow, not drawing it, but close enough to act. She followed his gaze, heart hammering. A figure slowly stepped into view. Another stranger, but not the one from earlier. This one was younger, wearing a fur-lined vest and carrying a lantern that barely pushed back the darkness. His face held no threat in it, only worry. It's one of mine, the Apache king said under his breath. The young warrior stopped a few paces away and bowed his head. They reached our borders, he said. Our scouts saw the fires too. The council sent me. She felt a nervous twist in her stomach. She knew what that meant. Trouble wasn't just hers anymore. It was between her and the tribe now. The Apache king nodded. Did they see you? No, the young warrior said, but they will soon. The valley is too open. The Apache king turned to her, his expression unreadable. We cannot stay here. A cold wave passed through her. Moving meant risk. Staying meant danger. Every choice pulled them toward something she didn't yet understand. The young warrior hesitated. shifting his lantern's glow across the three of them. His eyes landed on her briefly, filled with questions she wasn't sure she could answer. "Some in the council say the woman should not stay with us," said carefully. Her breath caught. She lowered her gaze, feeling a heat rise in her chest. She had expected the tribe to question her presence, but hearing it said aloud made her feel more exposed than stepping into the river earlier. She didn't blame them. She was a stranger who brought trouble trailing behind her like storm clouds. Others in the tribe, she imagined, wanted no part in a conflict with armed men hunting the plains. And who could blame them? The Apache King's voice deepened. "And what do the rest say?" "Some say she must be protected," the young warrior replied, "because she came seeking help. And because you brought her to our land." Those words seemed to spark something in the Apache King's eyes, though he didn't show it fully. She felt a tight pull in her chest. She didn't understand why he'd chosen to help her. She didn't know why he looked at her the way he sometimes did, so she had meaning she herself couldn't see. The young warrior shifted again. "A few believe we should trade her to the men chasing her." Her stomach dropped. The Apache King's head snapped up. "Trade her?" It was only spoken by a few, the young warrior said quickly. "But they say she is not one of us, and the trouble she brings could cause harm. They say peace might be bought if we give her up." Her breath thinned, and she stared at the ground. She had feared this. She had feared being alone in the world, feared being hunted, feared her past catching her, but the thought of being handed back to the men who followed her made a cold dread crawl under her skin. She tried to steady her voice. "Do you think they'll do it?" The Apache King looked at her with a steady, unshakable gaze. "No," he said. "Not while I stand here." His words hit her with a force she didn't expect. She felt warmth rise behind her ribs, a strange mix of fear and something deep she didn't dare name yet. Before anyone could say more, the young warrior spoke again. "But not everyone will agree with you. The council meets at dawn. They will want answers." The Apache King nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of those words. He thanked the young warrior, who then retreated back into the dark. Leaving the two of them alone again by the fire, the silence settled heavy between them. She finally spoke, her voice quiet. "They would risk everything because of me." "They fear danger," he said. "Not you." She pulled her knees closer. "They're right to fear it." "You're not the danger," he said. "The men hunting you are She swallowed hard. The truth she had been hiding, pressing harder against her tongue. She took a breath, then another. But the words still refused to come out. Instead, she said, "You don't even know what I've done." He watched her carefully. "You think your past speaks louder than you do?" "I know it does," she whispered. He leaned slightly closer, the firelight catching the small tribal jewelry on his chest. "Tell me why they are chasing you." Her breath shivered. The flames crackled softly. The valley wind brushed against the grass. "I can't," she said. "Not yet." He didn't push her. He didn't turn away either. He sat quietly beside her, the tension between them layered with trust and uncertainty. She stared into the fire. "There was someone I tried to help." She stopped there, unable to go further. He nodded once, as if he understood that even a small truth carried weight. Far off in the darkness, a faint whistle carried on the wind. Then another. Signals, not from his people. He rose sharply. "They're moving." Her heart jammed into her throat. "Toward us." "No," he said, eyes narrowing. "They're circling, trying to find a weak point." She stood too fast, swaying slightly as fear washed over her. He steadied her with a hand before letting go quickly. "They'll close in by morning," he said. "Will the tribe help us?" she asked. "They will help me," he replied. "And you're with me." The fire crackled, sparks lifting into the night air before fading. She felt the valley tighten around them, the sky darker, the hills sharper with threat. She wasn't sure who she feared more now, the men hunting her or the whispering voices inside the Apache Council debating what she was worth. And as the cold night wind swept across the plains, carrying warnings and secrets on its back, she realized something unsettling. The real danger wasn't only in the men coming from the ridge. was in the truth she still hadn't spoken, a truth that could change everything. When morning came, the sky carried only a thin line of gray when she opened her eyes. The kind of early light that barely touched the earth but warned that morning was on its way. Her sleep had been broken, filled with flashes of movement, flickers of firelight, and the weight of footsteps she couldn't outrun. She sat up slowly, rubbing her arms as the cold morning breeze swept across the rise. The Apache King was already awake, standing near the edge with his bow in hand, his gaze fixed on the distant ridge where the enemy fires had burned through the night. She watched him, noting the tension in his shoulders, the way his breath left him slow and controlled. He sensed morning danger the way other men sensed weather. The valley below was layered in soft mist that curled around the cottonwoods and tall grass, hiding more than it revealed. It made her uneasy, like the land itself was warning them that something was coming. He turned when he heard her move. His eyes softened a little, though the worry behind them didn't fade. "The council meets soon," he said quietly. Her stomach tightened. "Do you think they'll try to send me away?" "They will not send you," he said. "The question is whether they will stand with us." A pang of fear spread through her chest. "If they don't? Then I stand alone," he said. "And you stand with me." The words sent warmth through her despite the cold air. She found herself watching him longer than she meant to. Studying the man who carried danger with so much calm, it steadied her more than any promise ever had. She wanted to trust him completely. She wanted to tell him everything. But the truth still tangled inside her, heavy like a stone. They walked back toward the hidden path leading to his people's camp. The sun crept over the hills, turning the mist gold and waking the sleeping earth. Birds scattered from the trees, calling out in sharp notes. The valley seemed alive, restless. As they approached the edge of the Apache camp, whispers rose in soft threads. Warriors stood near the fires, watching her with guarded eyes. Some held curiosity, some fear, some quiet judgment. She didn't blame any of them. A stranger in their lands brought uncertainty. Uncertainty brought danger. The council sat in a circle near the main lodge. The Apache King placed a steady hand at her back, guiding her gently to the edge of the gathering. She kept her eyes down, feeling dozens of looks settle on her. An older warrior spoke first, his voice deep and slow. "The men on the ridge grow in number. By day's end, the valley may hold twice as many." Another man followed. "They look for her. We all know this, and we must decide if her presence is worth the trouble she brings." Her breath caught. She stared at the ground, her heart racing. The Apache King stepped forward. She did not choose to be hunted. Those men bring their own trouble. Blaming her for their choices makes us no better than them. A younger council member shook his head. "We know nothing of her. We know nothing of why they chase her. Without truth, we cannot offer shelter." The older warrior nodded. Yes, she must speak.
Oh.
Her pulse hammered in her ears. The weight of the moment pressed on her like a mountain. She felt the Apache King glance at her, offering silent strength. She closed her eyes for a breath, then stepped forward. "My past did not start with danger," she said quietly. "It started with something good. I tried to help a young girl escape a place where she was being harmed." Her voice trembled. "I thought I could get her out safely, but the men who kept her found out. They blamed me. They blamed her." She didn't survive their anger. The camp fell silent. Her throat tightened, but she forced the rest. "They said I ruined their business. They said I cost them money. They swore to find me. That's why I ran. That's why they chase me now." No one spoke for a long moment. She felt exposed, shaky, and small. She braced herself for rejection, for anger, for fear, but she felt none of that from him. Only steady, unshaken calm. Finally, the older warrior said, "You helped someone who had no one. That is not a crime," another added. "But these men are ruthless. They will not stop." The tension grew heavier. The council members exchanged long looks. Some fearful, some uncertain, some sympathetic. Then the Apache King spoke again. "Whether they come for her or for revenge, they will come." Running will not end this. Facing them will? A young warrior stepped forward. Then we stand with you, another followed. With both of you. But not all agreed. One man rose sharply. We cannot risk our families for a stranger. We cannot risk our people. Voices rose, some backing him, others pushing for unity. The air thickened with disagreement, frustration, fear. She watched in silence, feeling responsible for every raised voice. The Apache king lifted his hand, calming the growing noise. She is not the reason they come. Men like them create their own war. Today, it is her. Tomorrow, it could be anyone. Where we stand now decides what kind of people we are. Silence followed his words, deep and thoughtful. Finally, the older warrior nodded. We will stand. But we must prepare. A wave of relief washed over her so strong she nearly fell. The Apache king steadied her with a hand at her arm before letting go again. The camp moved quickly. Warriors gathered weapons, checked arrows, formed strategies. She watched them with a tight heart. She didn't want them risking their lives because of her. But she knew the decision had already been made. Later, as preparations grew louder, the Apache king walked beside her, his expression calm but focused. You spoke the truth. They heard you. She shook her head. I didn't tell all of it. He stopped. What more? She hesitated, then whispered, I wasn't just helping the girl. She was someone I promised to protect, someone I swore I'd keep safe. And I failed her. They know I carry that guilt. They use it to break me. His eyes softened. It was not your failure. They chose cruelty. That is theirs to carry, not yours. His words settled deep inside her, easing a pain she had carried too long. But before she could speak again, a shout came from the northern ridge. A scout rushed into camp, breathless. They're moving, he said. The men from the ridge. They're heading this way fast. Fear cut through the camp like a blade. Warriors grabbed their weapons. Horses cried out from the tether line. The Apache king stepped forward, eyes narrowing. How many? He asked. Too many to count, the scout replied. An icy tremor raced down her spine. She moved closer to the Apache king without thinking. He touched her arm lightly. Stay behind me. The camp shifted into motion, warriors spreading along the ridge lines, readying their bows, preparing defenses. She watched them all, her heart pounding so hard she felt it in her throat. The air thickened with tension. Horses snorted nervously. The wind carried the distant rumble of boots and hooves. Dust lifted on the horizon. They were coming. The Apache king stood tall, calm, and fierce, his long dark hair moving with the wind. Tribal jewelry resting against his chest, bow in hand. He looked like the land itself had shaped him for this moment. She stepped closer, unable to hide her fear. I never wanted anyone hurt because of me. He didn't look away from the horizon. You're not the cause. They are. The distant rumble grew louder, rolling across the valley like thunder. He glanced at her finally. His voice low, stay close. When the time comes, I will not let them take you. Her breath caught. Her heart felt ready to break and strengthen all at once. Then the first line of riders appeared on the ridge. Shadows against the rising sun, the conflict that had chased her across. Miles of land finally reached the Apache. Valley dot, everything moved toward its breaking point. And the moment before the storm hit, she felt it deep inside her chest. Whatever happened next would change. Both their lives forever. The riders thundered over the ridge in a long, dark wave, their dust rising into the air like a storm cloud, ready to swallow the valley. The earth trembled under the weight of their approach, and the cry of the lead horse cut sharply through the morning air. She stood behind the Apache king, gripping her hands together so tightly her knuckles turned white. Every heartbeat felt louder than the distant rumble, every breath heavier than the fear pressing down on her chest. The Apache king lifted his hand, signaling the warriors hidden along the ridge to stay steady. His calmness never broke. Not when the riders drew closer. Not when the leader pulled his horse to a stop 50 yards away. Not even when rifles glinted in the morning sun. The man she recognized from her past sat at the front. His hat pulled low, his coat dusted with dirt and anger. His eyes locked on her with a coldness that made her feel like she was back in that dark room where she made the first mistake that changed everything. "So this is where you ran," he called out, his voice rough as gravel. Behind a band of warriors and a man who thinks he can hide you? The Apache King stepped forward, placing himself squarely between her and the riders. "You entered our land. State your reason." A cruel smile tugged at the man's mouth. "You know why I'm here? She belongs to us." A wave of sickness rolled through her. The Apache King didn't glance back. He simply said, "She belongs to no one." The leader spat on the ground. "We're not leaving without her." The Apache King lifted his chin. "Then you leave with nothing." The valley quieted, as if the land held its breath. Warriors tightened their grips on their bows. Horses pawed at the earth. A rising tension coiled in the air like a live wire between the two sides. The man's stare turned hard. "You think you can stand between us and what's ours? She cost us money. She cost us more trouble than she's worth. That girl she tried to save made us lose even more." He pointed toward her. "She owes us." Every word sank into her like a stone. She felt her knees weaken, but she stayed upright. The Apache King's voice rose with a quiet strength. "No one owes you anything. You brought harm to someone under your watch. She tried to save her. If you had shown mercy, you wouldn't be here today," the man growled. "Mercy, don't pay debts." The Apache King lifted his bow, raising it with a slow, steady motion. The sound of dozens of bows being drawn followed from the ridge. Warriors rising from their hidden places like shadows waking at sunrise. The riders tensed, hands twitching toward their guns. But they froze when they realized they were outnumbered, outmatched, and surrounded. The valley had shifted against them. This land was no open field. It was a home protected by warriors who knew every hill and hollow. The leader swallowed hard, anger flickering with doubt. "You're willing to spill blood for her?" "I'm willing to protect the innocent," the Apache King replied. The leader's jaw tightened. He looked around at the hills, the sharp eyes watching him from every shadow. The calm strength standing between him and the woman he hunted. Slowly, the weight of the trap settled on him. He couldn't win. He knew it. He glared at her one last time. "You're lucky they care about you. But luck don't last." The Apache King lowered his bow just enough to show he wasn't afraid. "Leave now. Don't come back." The man hesitated, then jerked the reins. His horse turned sharply. The others followed, their anger fading into retreat as they rode back over the ridge, shrinking into shadows against the hills until the valley grew quiet once more. She felt her legs buckle slightly. Relief washed over her like warm water, leaving her breathless. The Apache King placed a steady hand on her arm, guiding her back to sit near the riseware. The fire had burned the night before. His touch stayed gentle, grounding her as the camp slowly returned from the tension of the moment. The warriors slipped out from their positions, some nodding to her with respect, others with quiet approval. They had fought not because she belonged to them, but because she mattered. It was a feeling she hadn't known in a long time. She breathed out, shaky but alive. "I thought they wouldn't leave," she whispered. "They saw the truth," the Apache King replied. "They saw they had no place here. Watch the ridge where the riders had vanished. I spent so long running. I didn't think I would ever stop." His eyes softened. "You can stop now. What if they come back?" she asked. "Then we face them again," he said. "Together." The word settled deep in her chest. Together, it felt steady, safe, real. Later, when the camp gathered to celebrate the peace that had returned, children ran around the fires, elders spoke softly of courage, and warriors shared stories of the morning's danger. She sat near the flames, wrapped in a soft woven blanket someone had draped over her shoulders. The Apache King approached and sat beside her, the firelight reflecting in his dark eyes. "You showed courage today," he said. "You faced what chased you." "I wasn't alone," she replied. He tilted his head slightly. "You were never alone." She smiled faintly, feeling her heart ease for the first time in years. "Do your people still worry about me being here?" He looked toward the council fire. Some do, but most see your heart now. They know you fought for someone else before you fought for yourself. That matters to them. She let the blanket warm her. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. You can choose, he said. Stay or leave. But you don't have to decide tonight. Her gaze lifted to the stars, bright and scattered across the sky. I haven't had a choice in a long time. He turned toward her, his voice soft. You have one now. The night grew quiet except for the crackling flames and the soft hum of distant drums. She looked at him, his strong features calm, his expression gentle yet certain. The fear she carried slowly loosened its grip. What if I stay? She asked quietly. He didn't look surprised. His voice stayed steady. Then you stay with people who will protect you. You stay where the land is, wide enough to give you peace. You stay where you can begin again. She took a slow breath. And with you. He held her gaze, his eyes warm. If you wish. Her heart lifted in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. The thought of staying didn't feel frightening anymore. It felt like a door opening, one she could step through without fear of being dragged back into darkness. Days passed, and the valley settled back into its calm rhythm. The riders never returned. The tribe welcomed her into their daily life. She helped the women gather roots and herbs, learned how to prepare food over open fire, and felt the soft laughter of children warm her tired spirit. She found herself waking each morning with something new in her heart. Peace, hope, a sense of belonging she'd never had. And the Apache King remained by her side, close enough to offer strength, far enough to let her find her own footing. Their connection grew without words, rooted in trust, shared danger, and something deeper that bloomed like a quiet flame. One evening, as the sun set in a wash of gold over the plains, she walked to the river where their story began. The water moved gently, glowing with warm colors. She stepped into the cool river, remembering her first trembling question to him. He approached slowly, standing at the bank. Watching her with the same steady eyes as before, she turned toward him with a soft smile. Do you like what you see now? This time he didn't stay silent. He stepped into the water with her, the soft ripples touching their legs as he reached her side. Yes, he said, his voice low and full. I do. Her heart swelled. Not with fear, but with something bright and whole. The valley no longer felt like a place she had run to in desperation. It felt like home. A place where the past no longer controlled her. A place where she could build something new with the man who had stood for her. When she couldn't stand for herself, the river whispered softly. The sky stretched wide overhead and the sun dipped behind the hills, closing the day with the promise of tomorrow, and for the first time, she felt she was exactly where she was meant to be.